Okay, I'm going to take you through my secret passageway back to the Think Ocean headquarters. Let's summarize part 1 before we get into part 2. In part 1, we learned that in 2015, in the winter, the water got real hot and a lot of coral died. And it took 3 years until the summer of 2018 for little baby corals to show back up on the reef. Then they stayed on the reef for about a year and everything was real nice. And then in the summer of 2019 and in the fall of 2019, the water got really hot. And the little baby corals started to die. I prayed for big waves. Some came. Let's see if it was enough. Let's head back to headquarters and start the state of the coral, part 2, Hawaii. Woo! See you guys back at headquarters. Woo! That was a long swim. Let me change my clothes and let's get the show started. Well, aloha and welcome to the state of coral, Hawaii, part 2. I'm Captain John and I'm going to be your host. And by the way, before we get started, wasn't that intro awesome? I really enjoyed making it. If you enjoy watching these videos, please hit this button. Don't be afraid to subscribe. And if you can, what really helps is sharing these videos with others that might be inspired by the educational content that we're trying to put down here at Think Ocean. All right, let's get started. So it was late fall of 2019, and all the baby corals that had been on the reef at that time for only 1 year began to lose their color. They started to bleach and turn white. And the main reason for that was increasing ocean temperatures. At that time, folks, the ocean temperatures here in Kona along the shoreline was 87 degrees Fahrenheit. That's really hot for Hawaii. Now, Hawaii is known for its big waves in late fall and all throughout winter. And I was hoping that a big swell would come and churn up the waters and cool them down and give the corals a chance to survive. Now, remember from my other video, the state of coral, part 1, and if you haven't seen that video, I invite you to go check it out. You'll really like it. There's a section in there that I explained how coral lives and thus how it dies. And a white piece of coral, that's its true color. It's not necessarily dead, but it is malnutritioned, and it's on the verge of starving to death. Well, the swell did come, but it only cooled the water about 1 or 2 degrees Fahrenheit. We need more swells. We need them to come quick so they can cool the water down substantially so these corals can come back to life and have a chance to survive. Well, the waves did come, and with every swell, the ocean waters cooled more and more. These are not little swells that hit Hawaii every winter. They're very big, that arrive from the North Pacific Ocean in fierce storms that are produced up in the Bering Sea. And these swells impact Hawaii with tremendous force throughout the winter. In Kona, we have waves that last a whole week sometimes, and they're 10 to 15 feet high, smashing and crashing along the shoreline. As the lip of the wave comes over, or as the wave finds shoreline and splashes, it disperses the water into fine droplets that can easily be cooled. And that fall of 2019 ended on January 1st, 2020 with a mighty swell that came in on New Year's Day and churned up the waters with mighty force for well over a week. And lo and behold, believe it or not, in mid-January, the water had now cooled in a period of 2 months 5 or 6 degrees. And we began to see rare observations of coral, bleached coral heads taking on color and coming back to life. And as the winter went on, more and more swells arrived and the ocean got cooler and cooler. And the corals began to take on color again. They were attracting in the algae that they have a symbiotic relationship with. It's called Zooxanthellae algae. It's the algae that gives the coral the color. And it's this algae that gives the coral another food source because it needs the food source of the algae. The algae photosynthesizes from the sun and its byproduct is consumed by the coral. The coral also itself has feather-like tentacles that it hunts prey with, captures it as it drifts by, mostly zooplankton, but it's not enough for the coral. It has to have the byproduct of the Zooxanthellae algae, which needs to photosynthesize from the sun, and that's why it's so important for corals to have sunlight. Well, wasn't that amazing to see those bleached coral heads come back to life? And as the summer of 2020 progressed, came and went, the waters remain cool and the corals are doing okay. They're really good, but there are a few problems. At the end of this summer, 2021, I'll make another part of this video and bring you guys a little bit more current and up to date. Now, I'm going to take you down to my garden. My coral garden. But first, if you haven't subscribed, please do that. Hit the like button, share this video with others. And now, it's off to the garden, the coral garden. Aloha, my fellow aquanaut friends. This is Think Ocean, and this is the story of our coral garden. The coral garden is a border of rocks. And in the center, we have propagated Pocillipora corals, the ones that are in jeopardy here in Hawaii due to global warming. We have gotten them from close by. They were attached to small rocks and would otherwise have become coral rubble. But the process to get to this magnificent and beautiful coral garden was certainly an interesting and laborious one. It started here in our Think Ocean fruit and vegetable gardens, where we grow our own food, not only to eat healthy and keep ourselves healthy, but to also keep the oceans healthy and keep the coral reef healthy. The way we do that is by growing our own food and reducing our carbon imprint and not having to rely on trucks and ships to bring us this food. Now please allow me to digress for a moment away from our coral garden story, of which we will shortly return, because our Think Ocean vegetable gardens have been very successful for many years, and our harvests have been beautiful and they've been bountiful, and they deserve another look. For many years, the Think Ocean team has produced a plethora of fresh vegetables, including these beautiful heads of lettuce, along with cucumbers and tomatoes. Tomatoes are awesome to ripen on the vine and eat fresh. We like to make and jar our own salsa and spaghetti sauce, and some of these tomatoes can grow as big as the palm of your hand. We grow lots of hot peppers as well, like these ripened on the vine jalapeno peppers. We also have bushes of lemon peppers, as well as these wonderfully sweet red cayman peppers. With this bounty of peppers, we make and jar our own hot sauce, the Think Ocean Release the Kraken hot sauce. You take your peppers and you pickle them in vinegar. And then you add salt, garlic, and onions. And some of our other vegetables we grow include broccoli and wombok. We grow bok choy and both of those are excellent in soups or salads, as well as kale. And my personal favorite, fresh, ripened on the vine, crispy and delicious bell peppers. I'm Captain John, and I'd like to thank you for watching. Now let's get back to how we came up with the idea and how we made our Think Ocean Coral Garden, which, don't forget, started right here in the Think Ocean Vegetable Garden. It was the summer of 2018, and I had a couple kids here with me at the Think Ocean camps learning about coral and advancing in their scuba diving training. While we were toiling around in the garden one day, one of them said to me, "Why don't we make an underwater coral garden?" I said in bewilderment, "How would we do that?" And they said, "Let's stack rocks and make it like a raised vegetable garden bed. And then we can find loose baby coral heads that are attached to small rocks that would otherwise become rubble, and we can place them in the middle where they'll be secure and they can grow and flourish." Well, that night at dinner, which was, by the way, of course, fresh vegetables from the garden and fresh caught ono grilled, yum, I said to them, "You know, that coral garden idea of yours, it just might work." A 10 hoot! With shovel, rake, and hoe in hand, we were determined to build a coral garden that even King Neptune himself would be proud of. This groundbreaking work was tough, but our desire to propagate coral and to take care of them and to become our future ocean stewards is keeping us going. More shoveling, more raking, and more hoeing. The work continued. We found large rocks that were close by and brought them over to the area and painstakingly hand-stacked them until it was done. Our rock wall border was done around this beautiful coral head that we would soon add other coral to. We began to find small Pocillipora species of coral that were attached to small rocks that would otherwise roll around in the large winter waves we get here in Hawaii and become coral rubble. We placed them securely within the boundaries of the coral garden, where they could hopefully grow and one day repopulate the reef. Over these last couple of years, we've added many pieces to the coral garden, and they all are healthy and growing. Now these were good kids, ages 13, 16, and 17, who spent that summer here with me at the Think Ocean camp. We all learned about coral, we observed it and studied coral all together, and we began to appreciate coral as the primary key component of a healthy reef system. After all, it's called a coral reef. Aloha. Welcome everybody to dive site Kilo Papa, where it all began for me many years ago as I was diving on this reef out here, seeing all the dead coral that we talked about earlier, and then one day seeing little baby corals. I started looking and they were all over the place. This is also where I discovered that a few of the big ones, the mothers that we talked about in the first film, were at as well. And so I wanted to observe them over time. And so I developed a coral surveying and monitoring program based on general observations. I know where these corals are, I dive this reef all the time, and I can go out to the very coral and film it over time. And we're going to show you now the baby corals on the reef. Not all of them, there's hundreds, in some circumstances thousands, and then I'm also going to show you the mothers, because there's only 4 or 5, maybe 6. This is an overview picture of the inner reef at Kilo Papa, and the length from north to south of the inner bay is 600 feet, or about 182 meters. And there's a compass indicating direction at the top of the screen. And everything on the inside of this yellow line is all black lava rock. Everything west of it on the outside is all coral reef. It was on my snorkel swim where I tapped the wall for my turnaround about 4 years ago that I noticed these very small coral heads, 5 in total. They're right along the edge of this wall in very shallow water, only about 1 meter deep, which is about 3 feet. This one is 4 years old, and these 4 in a line are 3 years old. And located on the edge of the south wall, in 30 feet of water, approximately 10 meters, is one of the coral mothers that survived the massive coral bleaching event that happened here in Hawaii in 2015 and 2016. Underwater, as indicated by the arrow on the screen, is this boulder. And I wanted to show you this boulder because this boulder has dead coral heads all over it. Do you see the destruction of the coral bleaching event? Yet, in all hopes, underwater, we find a little survivor. Now let's check out some of the young corals in the boxed area indicated by the arrow on the screen. And now let's look at some more corals in the very shallow section of the North Reef inside the boxes indicated by the arrow on the screen. And located on the north side of the reef, right where the arrow is pointing, is this beautiful big coral head. Do you see it? It's right there where the arrow is indicating. This is the first mother I discovered after swimming around this bay and seeing hundreds and hundreds of dead coral head. And the last thing I wanted to show you, just out of view of this picture, out in 50 feet of water, are two mothers. That makes 4 mothers in this whole entire bay. These last 2 mothers are very interesting, as they're attached to a deep water mooring, to the mooring rope itself. These 2 pieces of Pocillipora grandis survived the massive bleaching event that happened here in 2015 and 16. Now inside each of those small holes is the coral animal itself, a coral polyp. But remember, the color comes from the Zooxanthellae algae the coral is allowing to live within it in a symbiotic relationship. And by the way, this piece of coral on the mooring rope didn't survive the small bleaching event of 2018 that we had here, the one that this film is about. And this is why it's called coral bleaching, as it turns white just before it dies. It's eerie and ghostly in appearance. Aquanauts, keep yourselves healthy, keep the oceans healthy. Think ocean, and let's get back to the beach. But also as a general observation, I do a lot of coastal swimming. I like to swim down the coast with my mass fin snorkel on about a mile. And during these swims, I do general observations of the corals. And I found that things are actually looking pretty good. And what I want to do now is take you on a swim south of here, 1 mile, and we're going to end up at a place I call the hole. And we're going to see some of the corals and see what we find along the way. Let's go swimming.